Well, hello and welcome to ILoveGay today. And we are down in Florida and we're back with Rachel Covello from Outcoast, Florida. How are you, Rachel?
Hey Matt, how are you? I'm good.
Fantastic. I'm looking forward to seeing you in a month.
Yes, we're excited. We're
Yeah,
excited to be hosting Florida's first LGBTQ statewide tourism convention. So excited to
well,
have you.
that's a big deal because Florida, no one's ever taken that on. There with IGLTA and so forth. There are conventions for travel, but nothing just dedicated to and all about all things Florida.
Yeah, and I have to be careful what I market it because I like to say we're Florida's first LGBTQ tourism convention, and that would be a false statement. There have been tourism conventions hosted here before, of course, for our community from IGLTA, but we are the only statewide. We are the first statewide focus. So we're focusing on Florida destinations, the challenges in Florida right now around tourism, travel advisories, et cetera. So lots to cover that's really specialized toward the state specifically.
Yeah, and jumping right into that part, because that's, I think on a personal level and a professional business level, I mean, I think many of us have a choice, and you're at ground zero. You're at ground zero politically in the culture wars of everything that's happening today, and and we have a choice as whether we either show up and stand side by side with you all down there, or we just and it's not necessarily that's my choice, but it's not the wrong choice when some folks say, you know what, I want to avoid the situation altogether and so forth. That's their personal choice. But I think you've been very good at some of the interviews I've seen out there where you've really been putting a good case together for why people, businesses, and others should definitely show up.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important when we talk about even the advisories, and we'll be talking about a lot of this at the convention. We're covering travel advisories. We're covering, why diversity in tourism matters. We're covering how the drag community has been affected in Florida. A lot of different topics. So there's a lot of really cool stuff we're doing. But, we've been getting a lot as Outcoast. So I also own outcoast.com, which is Florida's LGBT tourism travel blog. And we've seen a big shift. Florida has always historically had a huge travel population from the LGBT community. It's always been a top destination for travelers, for LGBT travelers. It still continues to be a top destination, even if we don't think it is. There are definitely people wanting to leave Florida or avoid Florida, but there's still a lot of people showing up to Florida. And I think that was proven by St. Pete Pride. It was the biggest Pride on record, and it was packed. I mean, it was huge. And I think when we're coming out of this post-COVID shutdowns up north, people are still coming to Florida. It's still a different experience. But it's always historically been inclusive. There's definitely been a shift lately with laws and politics that have made people think otherwise, and have really, especially for transgender travelers and transgender residents, have created spaces that aren't necessarily as safe for those travelers. But you can speak to also transgender people who live in Florida and love it and don't want to leave. And yes, are they concerned because of bills and medical coverage? Of course, we don't want to minimize that. But the advisories are definitely a challenge we're facing down here. We're definitely getting people. What's new to me is, it used to be back in the day, and I was just talking about this with someone like 20 years ago when you would see a rainbow in an ad, or like I remember seeing a Cheerios commercial and seeing, a gay couple for the first time and getting excited. We were excited about that, even in times where things were divisive and we couldn't talk about being gay. Then we got used to seeing it normally. We got used to it, especially in Pride Month. We got used to seeing rainbows all the time. Now, because of politics, we're getting pushback on it. Even when destinations want to show their support in Florida, they want to run LGBT ads in Florida. And like Wilton Manors, which is like a gay hub, Visit Lauderdale, and Wilton Manors is a gay hub of Florida, still is. I mean, if you're a straight family walking through Wilton Manors, you feel out of place. I mean, it's that kind of destination. Now what they're seeing is those destinations who have always been pretty open and supportive and are doing advertising in those spaces are getting pushback now from our own community. I definitely get negative comments on posts that we make. And most of them, honestly, are not from people who are homophobic. A lot of times it's more from our own community, just pushing back and coming here. And I like to reassure people that there are so many LGBT people who live here and work here and play here and need people to travel here and support them. And so we don't want to minimize the issues, but we also want to encourage people still showing up, of course.
No, I got that. I felt it too. I was down there in just a month ago for Gay Days, and for not only the Gay Days events in Disney, but then also One Magical Weekend and some of their things. And it was everywhere you looked, it was packed. There was just at that moment in time we really did show up, and I think showing up for Disney also made an impact as well. And I think it kind of touched on some folks, kind of the passionate side of how they wanted to be able to be a part of this.
Yeah, and there are definitely destinations in Florida known for LGBT support. Visit St. Pete, Clearwater, or St. Pete area is very well known for the lesbians and gays in general. We definitely have our own trans community here and drag community here. We have Lauderdale, of course, has always been a mecca. Wilton Manors, Miami, South Beach, Key West is kind of a melting pot. It's almost like Key West reminds me of New York, where you can be whoever you want to be on the streets, and you just it's just a big melting pot of people. And Orlando, of course. And then the thing I do like to point out too is there's a lot of little pockets in Florida that people don't always know about that are also very welcoming. DeLand, Florida has a cute little, I've saw more rainbows in DeLand, Florida than some of the bigger cities, honestly. Like they have such a diverse community there. They're so open. It's very true Southern hospitality. Mount Dora is a cute little town that I have property in, that I love that town. I want to potentially retire there. But it's a cute town outside of Orlando in a pretty red county, but it's a cute little pocket that's welcoming and inclusive. Pensacola does some things with the women's weekends. And so there's little pockets all around. And I think it's important to share those stories. The whole goal really of this convention too was to create a one-of-a-kind space where both the smaller destinations that want to do more marketing, or maybe they're really struggling on how to navigate right now because their DMO is overseen by government. A lot of them are overseen by the government, even though they might want to do marketing. Maybe their political leadership is pushing back on it. I think it's important to create spaces where those small destinations and the big ones can come together and talk, have these conversations, let it out that, it is frustrating right now. How do we navigate this together? How do we continue sharing our inclusive messages? How do we share authentic stories about and welcoming experiences, even in the little small towns? So I'm excited to be able to give that space to people. It's in a way, it's kind of gifting them that space to have these open conversations, which isn't happening anywhere else. I go to, Florida tourism conventions all over. I go to the ones outside of the state, and I can assure you that, especially in Florida right now, a lot of these annual meetings are not talking about these things openly because there's a lot of red tape around them.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I think that's one of your strengths, is that with Outcoast and then tied in with this conference, you're one of the unique folks anywhere I've seen, even in the country, that kind of brings these voices, these voices from these especially smaller destinations to light, and you bring them out there. But the conference, you're bringing some of these folks, including even Naples, which you don't always hear as much about what's going on in that part of Florida. But you're also, fortunately, you have Fort Lauderdale and Miami and so forth, and IGLTA. They're all going to be there as well. So it's I think it's going to be a great mix as far as a lot of the kind of reflecting a lot of the work you've done.
Yeah, I'm so excited about when you kick off a convention, you're always nervous about, will the right people show up? Will you get the voices in the room that need to be there? And I'm really excited that we have representation from some of the big DMOs, destinations around the state. We have leaders like Stacey Ritter, who are open, very vocal voices about supporting the LGBT community. We have Naples, Paradise Coast present. Michelle with Paradise Coast leads that LGBTQ market segment in that area. And she is incredible. She's boots on the ground involved. When you think of allies in different ways, you think of the ally that speaks up and is super vocal. And we get that with Stacey. And then in some of the smaller areas where the place is not as well known to be inclusive, we got people like Michelle who are involved with every Pride event. She was, I don't know how much people know about after the hurricane, Naples Pride, which stays in very close communication with the Paradise Coast advertising team that markets to the LGBT segment. Naples Pride cleaned out the flood that they had in their Pride Center. They stocked it with supplies. Michelle was involved. They went out and delivered supplies to the the community that wasn't being supported as much post-hurricane. Didn't matter if they were gay or straight or whoever, they just wanted to support the community. And so it's amazing work that happens when DMOs on that level get involved with their local communities and spread the message that, we're here to support you. We're here to amplify your voices. And it's always, those stories are always the ones that I think make the biggest difference for me. But we want to share all the stories in Florida. Even little old, my wife and I took a trip up to Pensacola. I like sharing the story. We drove up to Pensacola for an RV road trip.
Yeah.
It was our first RV video project we did. And Pensacola was great, but we hung out with some lesbians and, we had fun there. But on the way, one of the places we stopped to stay for a couple of nights was Apalachicola. And Apalachicola, if you're familiar, is known for their oysters, or especially back in the day. And it's an old Florida fishing town. And we bellied up to a bar at a local bar, and there was an older gentleman sitting next to me, and you could tell the area politically is just definitely more conservative. But I was sitting next to my wife, Margaret, and we were holding hands. There was no question that we were a couple. And there was an older gentleman next to me who was sitting next to his wife. They were like in their 80s, and he had a tray of fried snapper in front of him. And I asked him about it. I didn't know what fish it was at first. And I asked him about it, and he said, it's snapper. And the next thing I knew, he takes the tray and he puts it in front of me. And he said, I caught it this morning, have a piece.
Wow.
And it was just one of those moments that you realized it didn't matter who you were, what you believed, the fact that I was sitting next to my wife. And we were joking about the fact that she was my wife and marriage issues, just like any other couple has. And it was such a real, authentic moment. And I feel like those moments are so important. They're important to share. They're important to experience, because those are the moments that really do change minds and hearts. And there was a rainbow flag in Apalachicola too, which was a pleasant surprise. So,
Nice.
so I love sharing those stories. I think it makes a huge difference.
I'm looking forward to all this. So it's we'll be seeing you in less than a month, July 31st, when it starts, through August 3rd. And but I'm looking forward to just kind of reconnecting with a lot of the folks down there in Florida I haven't seen in quite a while. So this is going to be nice.
Yeah, you'll have DMO leaders, you'll have hoteliers, you'll have attractions. We're also inviting in some of the pride leaders, some of the entertainers, the drag performers, not so much to perform, but more to speak and talk about their experience here in Florida. We really encourage, this is not the typical buyer supplier, convention. This is a come together, let's learn, let's network together. The whole goal is to unite, evolve, and flourish. We want to unite as a community. We want to evolve in our knowledge and in our perception on LGBT tourism. And then we want to flourish as a tourism community and create a more inclusive space and a more financially beneficial, space for our tourism destination. So I really encourage everyone to get involved. We are extending an LGBT owned business discount. If you go to our registration page, we did offer a discounted rate for LGBT owned businesses. We have small business rates. If you want to be here and money is a challenge, please reach out to me personally. I want people here. I want people having this conversation. I don't want money to be a barrier to being part of this conversation that's needed to have here.
Yeah, well, fantastic. Well, thank you again, and look forward to seeing you soon.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much, Matt.
Take care.
It feels good, so good, coming back again.